Hey.
All, all right. Thanks, Gretchen, and welcome everyone. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I hope wherever you are staying cool, um, especially those down south. So thanks for joining us today. Like Gretchen said, we see some familiar faces and some familiar names. So we're really happy you're all able to join us today. So we are going to talk about marketing and outreach for local associations. And we are really lucky to have an awesome group of people to share ideas based on their experience with local associations, or in some cases, national associations like Alive, and share ideas and strategies that might be valuable to you. So we are going to hear first from Chris Woods. Chris is the VP of Marketing for Alive. So he's going to share ideas regarding marketing, communications, networking that might be valuable for you at your local association. And then we'll hear from Brittany Coe. She is the VP of the Dallas Association for Directors of Volunteers. And Gretchen Jordan, who is the association manager for Live, and they will share some ideas around program planning and event logistics. And then finally, we will hear from Tim Suda, who's the VP of the Georgia Association of Volunteer Administrators. And me, I'm the past president of the Northwest Oregon Volunteer Administrators Association. And we'll talk a little bit about recruitment and benefits. So we have a lot to get to and kind of a wide array of topics to cover, but all of which are under the umbrella of marketing and communications and outreach, and how to build up those numbers for membership and for our board, our leadership, and really just getting the word out there about your association. So with that, I will throw it over to Chris.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. It is great to meet all of you. For me, it's the afternoon. I'm coming to you over in Boston, Massachusetts. Good afternoon for you all who are joining me on the East Coast, and good morning to everyone else in different parts of the country. I have been working in the volunteer management field now for the last 9 years. And currently work at the State Commission for Volunteerism and Service here in Massachusetts. So what we do is a little bit different. I actually provide a lot of tools, consulting, and funding to volunteer managers across the state, whether that's supporting local volunteer networks or helping volunteer programs find volunteers and match them to the right opportunities. I also recently joined the board of Alive as their chair of marketing and communications. I actually graduated from a business school with a background in marketing, and so have been spending some time actually helping Alive develop some of its marketing strategies and reach new members. So I'm just going to share a little bit of some highlights of what I thought would be important in terms of how to advance your programs in terms of a marketing highlight, how to reach new members, also some strategies for finding board members, and then just general communication, building networks. So I'll just jump right into it, and I guess we'll share some questions at the end. So my first thought, when I talk about people who are trying to engage people, right? I try to say, think local. When you are marketing this out to folks, you want to try to rely on some local partners that you may have. Now, I'm coming to you from Massachusetts, and we are a rather small state. And so when we are talking national, and when I talk to other state commissions, folks are really struggle to find, regional partners, where in Massachusetts, I can get from one end of the state to the other in 2 hours, which is crazy to some folks, but I've lived here my whole life, and it just makes sense to me. But I really try to rely on regional partners that I have in different parts of the state. And so whether you are a regional association working very locally within a few different communities, or whether you're trying to reach a national audience, I would definitely rely on some regional partners. So in Massachusetts, we actually don't necessarily have volunteer centers like I know some states have, but we do have really strong partnerships with local United Ways, local nonprofit centers. So not necessarily connecting volunteers to different organizations, but really just providing resources to nonprofits. We've had a lot of success with local nonprofit centers. And then also, like, we do have one volunteer center, which is Boston Cares, which is part of the Hands On Network, if those of you who are familiar with that. So they work all throughout Greater Boston to match nonprofits with volunteers and find opportunities for people to get in and volunteer. So those are really some great ways to start really building a network for folks, is to really start thinking local and reach out to some partners who really work with a lot of nonprofits in different regions of your state. From there, I would also say recommend you looking into different listservs, right? So what are some local email chains that go out regularly where people are sharing ideas and different resources? I'm a part of a few different listservs here in Massachusetts that actually reach out to hundreds of if not thousands of people in different nonprofits. There's a YNPN group that I'm a part of, a young nonprofit professionals network, that really only goes throughout the greater Boston area, but has around 5,000 individuals on it. And I get emails each day around job opportunities, volunteer opportunities, funding opportunities, just different ways to engage with folks, to just share resources and ideas. So I'd encourage you to try to look around, and perhaps local United Ways or nonprofit centers have access or ideas on how to get involved in that. I would also recommend reaching out to trying to find volunteer databases in your area. So different volunteer databases like Galaxy Digital, where people can post regular volunteer opportunities of ways to get involved. And then also reaching out to your state service commissions, which is where I come in. We do provide a lot of different connections to folks across the Commonwealth or across the state of ways to get involved. I think people often overlook state service commissions since they're usually housed in state government, but they can be very helpful in trying to find connections in different regions of the state. So when you start to think about programs and ways to sort of advance your programs, find new members, and just engage others, I really do try to recommend trying to stay local in those ways. In terms of trying to build networks, and especially trying to get new members and board members, I don't think it sometimes can hurt to think nationally. I know I just mentioned different volunteer databases like Galaxy Digital and Volunteer Match. I actually know a lot of organizations that have been really successful in engaging board members using Volunteer Match, Idealist, LinkedIn, some of those more larger scale volunteer recruitment areas. Taproot and Catch a Fire are two other really good skill-based volunteer networks that reach national networks. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at those if you are curious to really trying to build your network on a larger scale outside of just looking in a local network. And then, yeah, when it comes down to talking around different communication strategies, I find the best way to communicate to a local association or to just a network in general is to create an email that can go out where people can send an email to that one particular email, and it will reach, the entire group. So trying to create a Google group where folks can share ideas, share networks, share resources. We don't actually have any local associations here in Massachusetts, but we do have a Boston area volunteer managers group, which is comprised of, I want to say, between like 20 and 40 volunteer management professionals in Massachusetts. specifically in the Boston area, and they are all part of a Google group. And so we have someone that administers or is the administrator for that group. They add new folks and make sure that the emails are relevant and up to date. And then they basically can email that one particular email and it will go out to the entire group. So people can share ideas that way. It goes right into their inboxes so they don't have to go and check a different platform or a different system. And from what I understand, it's very easy to use. I've tried integrating other systems like using Slack or Google Classroom or Basecamp. Those are all great tools and resources, but they do require folks to go in and check those regularly. So if you are trying to communicate via like an online system like Slack, I really would try to avoid that unless you can really get everyone on the same page and to get them to check it regularly. But I've tried that in a few different capacities and have not really had much success. Yes, and then finally, my one piece of advice in terms of networking and trying to build networks is to not be afraid to branch out beyond volunteers, right? Or looking specifically within the realm of volunteer networks. I would encourage you to attend any sort of nonprofit convening that you can within your local regions. And I know that nonprofits do a lot of idea sharing. They do a lot of networking events that aren't necessarily tailored toward volunteers, but definitely share the opportunity to connect with volunteers and share ideas of how you're currently using volunteers. I know a lot of nonprofits use volunteers, and there's a lot of studies out there that show that volunteers are integral to the operations of a nonprofit. But aren't necessarily at the forefront of those conversations. But the more networking that you can do, the more people that you can get in front of to talk around volunteer benefits and volunteer programs, the more likely you are to find someone that's going to say, hey, our volunteer manager, our volunteer program can really benefit from this resource. And we really want to have continue this conversation further. So while there may not be a specific volunteer networking event, there's certainly plenty of nonprofit networking events that you can get in front of and start sharing your ideas with through there. I definitely encourage that with all of my partners, because that's something that I hear a lot, is that there's not a lot of conversation around volunteer managers or supporting volunteer programs, but the more that you can get in front of folks to talk about volunteers, the more people you can get for buy-in. So that's my 2 cents in terms of marketing and trying to engage folks both on local, regional, and national levels, and look forward to welcoming any questions and continuing this discussion more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. So many good ideas. Yeah, as Chris said, let's take a moment here. If anybody does have a question for Chris, if you want to come off mute and ask it now also, we will have space at the end after everyone has shared their piece to ask questions and throw some ideas around. So anyone have a question right now?
I kind of have a comment with a question.
Okay.
So what I found from my experience, Chris is right on with all of these, especially, staying local, getting associated with those other networks. But I've always found the secret is getting those folks, the Volunteer Centers United Ways, to understand what it is that you really do. So really work on practicing, because as soon as they hear volunteer, they think you're a volunteer program. Well, you kind of are, but you're also a professionals association. So I think emphasizing that more. So as soon as they understand, oh, it's another professional association, it just is for people who manage volunteers and volunteer programs. I think that for me personally has been able to help me open more doors and get more people to listen to, what it is I'm really trying to accomplish as far as, getting the word out about what we're offering, or just kind of it's being accepted, really.
Yeah.
Because, sometimes being a smaller nonprofit or a smaller group in a big city, you just aren't maybe taken seriously. And I see Jen is nodding like she knows what I mean. And I'm just wondering if any of others have had, so is my question, anyone else had experience in, dealing with, playing with the big kids, so to speak, and how you've had success or maybe not?
I'll come off of mute for this one. I would like to say, keep a realistic time frame in your head. You may think, oh, I'm reaching out to this person. They're going to really want to work with me. I'm going to hear back immediately. Sometimes it takes a while for you to continue to plant the same seed over and over again before you start to get the little tiny shoot. So don't feel discouraged in that because you don't know what the other person on the other end of the email is working with. But just, you can be a polite pest or just be tenacious and keep at it. And eventually you'll learn if that's a stream that's going to turn into something, or if maybe your efforts are better focused elsewhere.
Great point.
And going off of what Gretchen just said too, I like develop an elevator pitch, like a 30-second elevator pitch about who you are, what you do, and what you're asking for. And I think the most important part is that ask at the end, right? It's great to inform and share like a little bit about what you're doing, but what's that ask going to be, right? What are you really trying to get your point across? What are you trying to get them to buy into?
All right. Well, then, since you were speaking of, thank you so much, Chris, for sharing all of that. And let's pivot over to Brittany to start talking about program planning, logistics, and how does that, how does that relates to marketing and outreach? It's really like the meat on the bones, isn't it? So we'll start with you, Brittany, please.
All right, well, thank you so much. And I will type all of my notes so that Gretchen has an easier time of post-editing. So hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Coe. I am a current CVA. I've been in the field of volunteer engagement and management for about 7 years, and I see that we need to update our live information because I am now entering the second year of my presidential term for the Dallas Association of Directors of Volunteers. Yes, and as Jordan said, Gretchen, my computer does buzz. So sorry about that, but just to get right into it, I like to have a flow chart. My brain works best in sequential order. So step one, if you are thinking about having an event or planning a program for your members, or as like an open house to let people know who you are and what you do, set your event goals. So any and all decisions that you have about your event are going to flow from here. So think about, what is the purpose of your event? Is it networking? Is it learning? What do you hope to achieve or accomplish with having this event? And also focus heavily on the attendee experience. Logistics are going to be something that's in each and every one of these steps. I have 4 total. So for instance, what is the sound quality like? Are you working with event vendors? Parking, tips to navigate the event space, and accessibility. I know in the last couple of years that DEA and I, so diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, have been big buzzwords. We do have a law in our country, which is the ADA, so Americans with Disabilities Act, but it's one thing to be compliant, and it's another thing to be sure that you are going a step above and really focusing on the needs of your attendees. So logistics at this stage would include, who do you think your target audience will be? Will it be younger people, possibly ones that you can assume will be more able-bodied? Will there be a mix of ages and accessibility and mobility potential? Also, for instance, if you're having an event in a hotel, are some of your attendees staying in the hotel? What's the easiest and best way for them to navigate to the areas where your event will be taking place? Suppose you're partnering with a local college campus. Will you need golf carts to get people from one part of the campus to the other part of the campus? Will you need signage that guide people there? So in every iteration of your logistics, keep in mind, if you had never visited that space before, what would you tell people? Do you need multiple languages for your signs? Step 2 would be to delegate tasks. So for instance, DADV for short has an ad hoc chair. So we have someone that is just our person of requirement. They help with what is needed, and they can do things like go to your walkthroughs. So Venue measurements. Again, going back to that ADA compliance, is your sound going to be too loud for some people? Do you have the money to invest in someone to do live captioning or perhaps signing? If you don't have that, could you get a hold of a really big TV screen and maybe a mic that has that text to talk option available? Will you have seating in areas so that if you are sitting in the back, are all of your slides still, color friendly for people that may not be able to see the full color spectrum? Will it be big enough for people to see throughout your event space? Signage in the location itself, it's simply not enough to have someone parked in the parking lot, a volunteer, for instance, and say, all right, well, you're going to go up to the second floor, you're going to exit the elevator and do this and that and the other. Would your event benefit from like a passport? Any information you can send your guests in advance. So parking. I get invited to a lot of things where I have to drive and park. Am I paying for parking? Is parking comped? If I have the little ticket, where do I go with that? And another step I always like to recommend, some people will just send like a top down or like a blueprint map of the space. Not everyone's brain works in a way that they can fully flesh that out in 3D. So also keep in mind other learning styles. And does your group need customer service training? You may think, oh, I know how to be nice to everyone, but on event days, there are always challenges that come up, and you simply can't assume that everyone in your group has the same level of patience that you do. What if someone comes in and they're not dealing directly with someone from your organization, but instead customer service from the venue, be it a hotel or campus that you're using? Make sure you let those people and anyone involved in your event know what your expectations are. Walk through your space, walk through your space, walk through your space. Where is Wi-Fi? What is the password? If you're inviting vendors, do they need electricity? Where are the outlets located that they can do that? Have and know what the emergency exit plan for your event space is. We're in Texas, so that's most likely going to be a tornado or something else crazy falling out of the sky. But unfortunately, these days we have to deal with, the potential for active shooters. But if someone that's not in part of your event becomes disgruntled, does everyone that is going to that event space know what the address is? If there's an emergency situation and someone in your team has to call 911, first two questions are what's your emergency and what's your location? Know that. Also, who's going to be the day of on-site contact, whether it's from the venue you're renting or someone on your team. And then finally, you've made it through all of those hoops, and now we've reached the day of. Have a day of communication plan. Put it in writing, who will be where and what are their responsibilities. Try to game through some of the things that you may not be able to, even anticipate. I like to have a worst case scenario. So who is the team leader for if someone registered and their registration is not showing up? Who is the team leader for any disgruntled comments? What if someone's like, oh, I can't find the bathroom and no one here knew where that was? What if there is someone who's attending and last minute has to bring their kid? Do you know where the family restrooms are? Is there a room that you can give them off to the side where in case that kid gets fussy, that they have somewhere to go? Is anyone attending going to bring a service animal? So these are things that you can also build into the invitation for your event. So one, your guests know that they are being considered, but two, you can also have that information in advance and look really friendly and hospitable. Also, COVID may have taught a lot of us this lesson, but what to do if you have to cancel. Insurance has Act of God on there for a reason. Sometimes there are things that no one could possibly anticipate. You've got everything done. So for instance, my coworker was signed up earlier this year to attend a conference in Austin. The building event space flooded due to bad weather that they had. So she wasn't able to travel and they had to pivot to putting everything online. Do you have a backup plan for your backup plan? What if there is an illness on your team, or you've invited a keynote speaker and for whatever reason that person is no longer available? Try to think through those. Of course, you're not going to be able to possibly consider every worst case scenario, but when you plan anticipating a problem and anticipating the experience of your guests, you can go a long way to ensure your success. So I'll wrap up there so we have a few extra minutes. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them into the chat.
Wow, Brittany, it seems like maybe you've planned an event or two in your time.
Maybe once or twice.
Once or twice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the focus on inclusive spaces that you put there. It's a really easy one for us to forget. And I've been at events for my local association where they were upstairs, and that may or may not work for someone. And you're mentioning even things like, potential for children to be at your event. I've been at not one, but two networking happy hours for my local association where people brought kids. And so, like, a little plan B for that is not a bad idea, because if after work and people pick up their kids and they want to stop by your event on the way home, that could happen. I've had it happen twice. So yeah, and Arlette is going to recruit you for her next event, Brittany. So please be on the lookout for that. If you want to hop on over to New York City and do an event with Arlette.
I've not visited. Something back to the kids part. So I would do bi-monthly volunteer orientations, and sometimes people would tell me they were bringing kids and sometimes they didn't. So I got in the habit. Shout out to Crayola. If you go to their website, they have lots of free printable coloring pages and other little activity sheets. So you can just print some of those out. A box of crayons is cheap, and then you've got something to go there. Or Five Below, shout out to them as well. I love them, but they have fidget spinners and other things to keep guests occupied. The same if you have guests with sensory sensitivities. Could you all get some headphones or some other things to help? So yeah, just really considering the experience of your guests goes a long way in helping to solve and head off some of those potential problems.
Yeah, and that framework, and we're going to talk about this later, but every event is a recruitment opportunity, and so to bring folks into your association as members, as board members, all of those events are your opportunity to connect with that community, and making it as welcoming and inclusive as we can, as Brittany so perfectly laid out, goes a long way. So we're going to talk with Gretchen here in just a moment about the idea of hybrid events. But before we do, any questions for Brittany? And again, we'll have space at the end for additional questions. But before I move over to Gretchen.
And I've also, I've got a same thing as last question, a comment and a question. Brittany, I really liked what you said about what if the cancellation. And so I would really encourage you for your local association to have something in place that is everybody knows to count on. So, whether you put that on your website or a Facebook page, or you send an email, so people always know, is the meeting on? Because that can be really frustrating for folks to realize they drove all that way and parked and came in, and then there's no meeting, and what, I did not hear about it. So develop a system and be consistent with that. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Brittany, because that's important. And I mean, nobody wants to cancel. That's never fun. But something, if you could talk just for a little bit about, and you talked about it in your presentation, and I remember several years ago, your local association did a presentation on how to deal with an active shooter, and that it hurt my heart to know that you did that. But I would love for you to talk a bit more about, where you found those resources, and if that's something you're planning to do again, because just in my travels and just, all the things that I see online, I have never seen a local association that has done that. And I really think that is a good, it's hard, but it's a really good idea for a presentation.
Yeah, thinking back, I think the Department of Homeland Security, so DHS, has a lot of that information. So there's also smaller associations, like unfortunately synagogues and places of worship have come under fire. So if there is a local Jewish federation in your area, they typically do a lot of training around that. Also checking with your local police department. So at my previous agency, I just reached out to them. There's usually someone on the local PD that is in charge of that sort of training, and ask them, usually free, if there is a cost involved, but could an officer come and do a walkthrough of your space and then do their presentation? Because I find it hits home a little bit more when it's like, yeah, this isn't just general information for when I'm out and about. It's also something that applies to my space. And then train. There's a reason that schools do fire drills. I think when we become older, we kind of get out of that mindset because we feel we're able to be more in control of the situation, and that makes us safe. But your plan is only as good as how often you practice it. If you I did a scavenger hunt one time at my last agency, and I put little like plastic Easter eggs around. And in order to find them, the questions were, this is where you go in case of a tornado. This is where you can go, for XYZ. And people got little prizes. I think there was like candy or some, nominal gift cards. But having everyone know that information, because especially in an event, you're going to be in an unfamiliar space, but have a lot of people who are depending on you to know what's going on. You have to be able to remain calm, and one of the ways to do that is to follow the plan.
Yeah, that's a good point. My local association, we've definitely used event spaces that were in, religious buildings or organizations, or if there is some nonprofit that you're at that has a mission that might be targeted in some way. I know, I work in a journalism organization, and that, can get people pretty excited. And so we take security into account. And when we're using spaces in various nonprofits, it's good to have that as a consideration as you're entering a space that might not be yours and when you're especially familiar with. But if your event team and your board has some of that information and knowledge, then that can go a long way with you. Great question. Anybody else for Brittany before we move over to Gretchen? All right, and we'll leave space at the end as well. As I mentioned, so Gretchen, we would love to thank you, Brittany. Such good information. We would love to hear from you, Gretchen, about especially hybrid events or online events or both, because your work with Alive, of course, there is the annual conference. We have events like this all the time where they're either this one is exclusively online, but sometimes they're both. They're a hybrid model. And so we'd love to hear any information that you have around how to manage logistics around that. I've only been in a few of them, but I imagine there's some special logistics in addition to everything that Brittany just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jen. I will say, first of all, the term Zoom or online meeting is like Brittany said, since COVID. I think most everybody knows how to do it, so it's made it a lot easier. But I can tell you just from talking with local associations over the past few years, those that were able to transition into that online meeting setting were a lot more successful in retaining members and just retaining that momentum. So again, I think many of the things that Brittany talked about are relevant, but again, it's fine to be flexible. And I know the local association in Indianapolis area, right off, they went ahead and did a monthly networking meeting during COVID, but they also had a monthly happy hour meeting. And that was like, come as you are, come with whatever beverage you are drinking. And basically it was just a place for people to vent and to gripe. And if you've talked to me for any length of time, some of my best professional advice is if you have got a gripe, don't take it home. Don't tell other people at work. Talk to a colleague who will understand and will give you advice if you need it. Taking things home, sometimes you get unsolicited advice, or taking it, back to work, that could turn out to be really disastrous as well. So that's always something good to consider. And in terms of, meeting, I know that there are some locations where folks are just now starting to meet back in person, and others have been doing it still for several years. But I think a lot of those things that Brittany talks about also applies, is making sure you're, mindful of the time and not necessarily the location, but those DEI factors, to make sure that people have a good space to be in an online meeting. And certainly it's okay. Some folks may be in a place where, the background is not great, and so they're just going to be off camera the whole time. How many of us have done a Zoom meeting from our car? So you just, like me, so you just keep offline, the whole time, but they're in listening. And there are definitely different ways to keep people engaged, I think. And I would say, as much as I think for, especially for a lot of urban locations, being able to still meet remotely from time to time is great, because sometimes people just cannot drive across town. In a smaller area, that may be great, but just haven't. I'm traveling again. Many of you know that. So I started out in Orlando, and then I went to New Orleans, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then I was up in the Maryland and Virginia. Then I was in Indianapolis, Chicago, just in St. Paul a couple of days, drove through Montana. Now I'm in Spokane, Washington. So, I mean, every community is different. And for sure, I've been able to talk with some folks from local associations, and, in a bigger urban area, it just is harder to get across town, no matter when or where the meeting is. But I know that just being consistent. So consider maybe every other month you're online, and every other month you meet in person. And then that gives everyone a chance to participate, in some way. The other thing to talk about the hybrid experience is, I think just some learnings that we've taken from the hybrid conference, and just knowing that there are definitely some things you can control, but you may not always be able to control the technology. So always have, try to have that backup, if something goes wrong. What if your connection stops working? What if there's a local storm? Just before this session this morning, I was trying to log in about 10 minutes early. Guess what? Zoom says, oh, it's time to update. Glad you're here. And so I didn't log on until like 4 minutes till, because it took that long for it to do it and restart and all the things. So just, always have that backup plan, what if, and then, just be really open to suggestions from your attendees about what they would prefer. And I think I found, in terms of program development, what I've found consistently over the past, 25 years is at any given time in your area, within your network of volunteer engagement professionals, you're going to have about 30% of people who are really new, 6 months or less. And then 30% who are, have been doing this since the last century, like me. And then there's that other 30% that are in the middle, that are, in all sorts of phases of learning and growing. So it's important to think about your topics, and it's okay to have some that are, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And I will tell you, just from my experience with Alive and with local associations, that there is usually, anytime you call it beginning, less people will show up. The more you call it intermediate or advanced, everybody's going to show up. And they'll still say, oh, I just started, but I'm still coming anyway, because, I'll learn this. And it was about, almost 15 years ago that we did an advanced volunteer managers conference in Portland, Oregon. And Jen, that might have been just right before your time. But we had, and normally we would do that conference there with Nova in Portland, Oregon. We'd have about 100 people show up. But because we called it advanced, we had over 200 people show up from Idaho and Northern California and Washington. And although it's changing, and you can just kind of see that by who's on the screen today, we had the highest percentage of men volunteer managers come than it ever come before. It was like almost 20%. So don't be afraid to use that title, but knowing that you're always going to have that mix of, attendees who are going to be hungry for that information. And anytime you can get folks together and have experienced folks, talk to the newer folks, I think people are happy to be, a sponge in both ways, to be wrung out and to absorb. So it's always great when you can do that kind of networking too.
Thank you, Gretchen. So much of what you said sounds very familiar, and I relate. And you're so right about, sometimes people are looking for basics, but often, people have been doing this a while, and what else can we offer? And having a combination of both is really nice for that. And I really appreciate you naming that it might, in some communities, be better to do a combination of in-person and online or hybrid, because, and I wanted to go back to what Chris was saying about, he was giving us a lot of really innovative approaches to marketing and communications, and really thinking outside of the box from what a lot of local associations would typically do in terms of being, focusing things locally, but then also where are there opportunities to focus on it nationally. And, he mentioned like some of the big national platforms. And it made me think, when you were talking, that if we're offering online or hybrid workshops, what's the harm in seeing if people from outside your community want to attend those workshops as well? I mean, it's a fundraising opportunity, if nothing else. But during the pandemic, when my local association was online, we had participation from well outside the Portland metro area, people who were attending our workshops from 2, 3, 5 hours away, or even in like the Pacific Northwest, but from other states. And so when Chris is mentioning, opening up your idea around marketing beyond just your local community, which is of course important and focus, but also where are there opportunities to reach beyond that? It makes me think that hybrid and online workshops, are a way to invite people from outside the community to attend and see what you're up to at your local association. So just my little side thought there. Any questions for Gretchen around online or hybrid logistics or anything associated?
And if it's okay, I'm going to just take like 5 minutes and talk about the hybrid conference itself. So bear with me here while I do a new share.
Yes. Do you want to do that now where we're at it?
I'll just do it now.
Great.
While I have you all here. So this is just a couple of things. And I know that many of you have already attended in the past, and thank you for your support. And we're looking forward. We're really excited about this year. And this is just the slide deck that we're using for our informational sessions. There's one next week if you want to sign up for. And I'll just show you a couple things. So I've come up with this new saying. So the hybrid conference is like the HelloFresh of conferences. So it's like a kit comes to you. We provide the speakers and the agenda. All that stuff is taken care of. All you need are the people, way to register them and feed them. And of course, a location. So it's been a great opportunity. And we're really excited about this year's speakers. Rob Jackson is our facilitator this year. But Beth Cantor is kind of like the expert in nonprofit and technology. She's internationally known. And when we were negotiating with her, people were asking who this person was. And I said, they asked if it's Bill Gates. And I went, no, but this person knows Bill Gates. So it's kind of, it's kind of a big deal. And that Beth is coming. And when we talk to her, I mean, she really understands that volunteers should be there to keep that human touch. And then, of course, Tony from Better Impact is going to talk about volunteer information online and data security. And then Stefan is going to talk about technology and volunteerism. So we talked about technology a couple of years ago, which is in a really different concept. And as you know, technology is kind of like dog years, right? 1 year for us is like 7 years in technology. There's been so many advances since that last conference. So this is going to be totally different. And just a little bit about, what it's like from the host site. But we have these great pictures from last year, and a shout out here to DADV who sent some great pictures in, and you could see, how folks are meeting in person, but they're being able to watch on the screen and discuss. And let's see, just I'm going to swing through a couple more slides. So you can come to the information, but I just want to bring this up really quick, is because we had Beth Cantor and her presentation fees are higher, we raised our prices this year. But then that early bird discount is not correct. We raised our early bird discount. So basically, if you register and take the $100 early bird discount by the end of July, it's the same price as last year. So registration is open now. Don't wait. And we expect a lot of people to come because of Beth Cantor. So we're really excited about that. So if you've got questions, you can just visit the conference website or me individually, and we'll be happy to tell you more about that. And then one other thing that I want to show you really quick is on our website. I had put in the chat box, don't be afraid to put in a calendar request for your event or conference, we're happy to put that on there. And this is me kind of nerding out. I emailed Chris about it the other day, but I just found out a way to do events in colors. So they kind of stand out a little bit more and they look a little more interesting that way. So all you need to do is just click on, there's a link. Where is there that link? Oh, to submit an event. And you just go through and just fill out the event, and then I'll see it and I can approve it right away. So if it's a conference, great. If it's a special meeting that you're doing, great. But I would also encourage you, especially if I know some local associations have done, like if they wanted to do like an advanced session, and we used to do this at Nova, Jen, I don't know if they do it anymore, but we would, and this was back when like Susan Ellis was first doing podcasts, it was like really new and shiny, and that we would listen to the podcast and then we get together and discuss. So I just really want to bring this Alive Academy for next month. I think this is really important. And this is presented by Ian Adair. He's a national author, and it's all about mental health and ending stigma in the workplace. So this is because if you're an Alive Local Association member, any of your members can attend this for free, but it might be nice, like a bonus bounce back is like everybody attend this webinar if you can, and then we're going to have like an online meeting or an in-person meeting to talk about it later. And I'm hoping that he'll talk about this. And if he doesn't, I just want to say another great learning opportunity for your local association is first aid, mental health first aid. So if you've ever taken the Red Cross first aid classes, they're great. I'll take a drink. But there was an organization based out of Australia, and I'll look it up and put it in the resources page. And it's a first aid class for mental health. And so dealing with someone that might be having a schizophrenic episode, and they talk about all the terms, and it's really well done. It's like 2 days long. Has anybody ever taken that class, the first aid mental health class?
Yes, I did prior to COVID. One of our Greater New York hosted it. It was great. We did it for 1 day.
Thank you. And excuse me for coughing. I have my grand dog is here and I love him, but I'm also allergic to dogs. So I have to balance that out. But I just really want to encourage you to, and of course we'll record this and put it on there, but it's a great learning opportunity because that's a very important thing. So I'm going to go back and share to the slide deck and let you continue on. And thank you for letting me talk so long.
And thank you, Gretchen. Yeah, lots of exciting things coming up, and actually you kind of are pivoting us without knowing it into our next topic, which is we'll start digging into when we're talking about marketing and communications, you know, foundations are programs, foundations for that, you know, what is it that you're marketing? What is that you're communicating about is the programs and also the benefits of your association. And so Tim and I are going to chat a little bit about recruitment and benefits for your local association and how to communicate that out to your members. So I'm going to hand it over to my friend Tim, who is down in Georgia where it's hot, but not quite as hot as Dallas, and see what kind of trouble we can make here.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I've got to say, I always love networking events and when we can get together like this, because 90 degrees was very hot when I stepped outside a few hours ago. And you know what? Now it feels wonderful after hearing from some of you where it's hotter. So it's all about perspective. Yeah, so we wanted to kick off talking about member recruitment and really focus on being intentional. So as Jen introduced me earlier, I am the vice president of the Georgia Association for Volunteer Administration. And I just want to talk reality for a second here. And that is COVID was a massive blow to our local association. Lots of changes in the state that happened simultaneously were a massive blow. And we saw our membership drop significantly. And there were even points where GAVA may have ceased to exist if not for a few very awesome people on this local associations committee that helped bring GAVA back. And I was lucky that I joined the board right after everything is going in the right direction. But when I talk about being intentional, I really encourage you to have a plan when you think about recruitment, not just a recruitment plan. Like that's kind of like, we have volunteer recruitment plans. We know that, but to have a plan for how your organization, how your local association is going to grow intentionally. What does that look like? What are your goals that you're setting for yourself? And with GAVA, due to the situation that we were in, we actually, our board got together, and I see one of my fellow board members on here today. Hi, Brandy. We got together and we really had some intentional conversations about we're going to have a few lean years, and that's okay. We're going to have a few years where we may even dip into our savings, and that's also okay. We've been around as an association for over 35 years now, and we feel like we're going strong. And so one of the core tenets of longevity is being able to make those decisions. And that's what we did. And so for the past few years, we've kept our membership fees, our membership dues extremely low compared to many other organizations. And we focused on growth. We wanted to grow our programming. Because as Jen's going to talk about here in a second, you got to have benefits to have members. There has to be a reason for them to want to join. So we kept our dues low. We focused on adding programming. We went from 4 presentations a year to more than 12 a year now is what we typically do. We also did some targeted recruitment of potential members, and Jen will talk about some tactics around that as well. But just having some intention behind it, understanding what our goal was going to be, because you can't just throw a whole bunch of things and see what sticks. And you can, that typically is not going to work. So understanding your own organization. We're a statewide local association in a state that has 3 more local associations, including one that covers the city of Atlanta and metropolitan Atlanta, one that covers an area around Columbus, Georgia, including some people out of Alabama, because Columbus is on the state line, and then one along the Georgia coast. And so in addition to coming up with our plans, we didn't want to compete with our fellow associations because we all wanted to grow together. And so that's been something that's been intentional. We include those individuals on our board meetings and our planning to make sure that we are working towards the same path to success. The other thing that we've done that I think is mostly unique, there are a few other local associations that I have seen that do it in different levels, but we also have different levels of membership. So we have a standard membership level for an individual. We have dual membership level, which saves you $5 signing up 2 people at the same time. We have national or retired membership level. So this would be, retired individuals from the field who still want to participate. We have a student membership level, so people who are in college. And then finally, and one that's probably the most interesting for us is our organizational membership level. And over the past couple of years, we've actually seen a trend where a majority of our members now belong to organizational membership. So what does that mean? Well, it means we've increased our membership without increasing the amount of money we've been bringing in. So that brings its own challenges. But again, we've been intentional with our planning on that and our budgeting and what the next few years look like. But what that means is an entire organization can join at once. And we've seen that happen in a couple of different ways. We've seen a museum bring in all of their volunteer and community engagement staff on as members. We've seen universities bring their entire programs in. So we've seen different types like that, but we've also have an entire local association, Cova of the Coastal Empire, actually joined, and they have done that mostly as a stopgap because they were in danger of not being able to continue to exist as a local association. So we provide over 85% of their programming that they participate in. We've also had some other organizations that we're currently working with on becoming organizational membership. So there's a group called the Cobb Collaborative. Cobb is it's a county in Metro Atlanta, northwest Metro Atlanta, just outside of the city of Atlanta. And it's a collaboration of a bunch of nonprofit and government partners, all working in the humanitarian space. And so we've brought them on as an organizational member. So it does decrease the amount of money that you bring in. But for us, our mission of our organization, this goes back to that intentional planning. The mission of our organization is to facilitate and grow and encourage volunteerism and leadership in volunteerism across the state of Georgia. And with that being focused, it made more sense to us to have more of an audience that we could reach, a larger group of people that we could work with and support and learn from and gain in, than it would be for us to be able to bring in the fancy big speakers or to be able to invest in lots of fancy tools, at least for the time being. So that's, a lot of what we've done was very intentional. We're still in that, and I'll hand it over to Jen here in just a second to talk about recruitment. But one of the things that I will add that we were also intentional about is we did a little bit of research around many of our members and found out, and then many of our contacts, because we also have a huge contact database of people who read our newsletter but aren't officially members, or attend our programming but aren't officially members. And we found out when the majority of our contacts' fiscal years ended. And for the majority of our individuals, it was either the end of June or the end of December. Now, different nonprofits, different organizations may have different times. I know GAVA, ours is the end of October. It's very weird. I think we're unique in that. But we acknowledged that many organizations are very thrifty, and then all of a sudden they get to the end of the fiscal year and they're like, we've got budget left over, and if we don't spend it, we're gonna lose it. And so we were very intentional to say, hey, it's right before the end of December. We're going to give you a $5 discount if you do it before the end of the year. Spend that budget money. And we were able to bring in some additional members through that way. So just a tactic that worked for us. But moving from that being intentional, having that plan, making sure you have your focus for your organization, the next step is really on the actual recruiting. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Jen.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, like Tim mentioned at the top, recruitment and benefits are really hand in hand. And so we're considering the kinds of marketing strategies that Chris was outlining. What is it we're communicating about, and what are the benefits? And so really, we found at our local association that the more we had on our calendar, the better our member recruitment went. Just as simple as that. So when people, if you're gonna, send out one of the emails like Chris was talking about, and people want to go to your website and check it out, and what do you have coming up? If your calendar is skimpy, your calendar is skimpy, and they may think, well, is it worth my $50 membership, or whatever your member level is? The more you can have built out program wise on your calendar, in my experience, the better recruitment goes as you're trying to recruit and invite more members into the organization. So one easy way to beef up your programming on your website is if you're a local association, if you're a member of Alive as a local association, like Gretchen mentioned just a minute ago, all of those monthly webinars, your members can attend all of the Alive monthly webinars for free because they're a member of your local association and the local association is a member of Alive. So that's a really easy way to fill out your program calendar right off the bat. And then whatever additional networking, educational workshop, training kinds of opportunities you offer can be filled out by them. But I would definitely, when you're thinking about marketing, I would encourage you to not put the cart before the horse and go and invite a bunch of people to come and look at your website and then there's nothing there when they get there. I would definitely, if you can, spend time building that out and then invite people, because if they go to your website and they're like, oh, wow, for $50 I can attend, first of all, a monthly webinar and, you know, a networking event here and there and a workshop here and there, that's really worth my $50. Then I think, you know, that it might end up being more successful. And I mentioned this when Brittany was speaking earlier, but we would use every event that we had, whether it was a happy hour networking, which in Portland, we really love doing events at bars. That's the thing we do. Every event that we had, whether it was a training or a networking event, was an opportunity for us to recruit members. So if you're not making an actual targeted pitch about, hey, if you're here for this training, but you're not a member yet, please become a member and here are all the benefits of becoming a member, I would definitely add that into your little welcome spiel or your thanks for coming spiel. We did, for years, we did a month or annual membership recruitment, sort of like a membership drive, where once a year the board members and if we had committee members would all go and do some outreach. And the truth is that, you know how it is, you're doing this as your volunteer gig on the side. There may not be a ton of time to devote a lot of attention to recruitment all at once. We found it more effective to do ongoing rolling outreach and ongoing rolling recruitment rather than trying to do it all once a year. So we would have a big list of all the nonprofits in the area, and you can get those from the Secretary of State. You can look at local government associations. We would get a big list and we would divide it up, and then every month we'd reach out to 3 or 4, and by the end of the year we reached out to a couple hundred organizations because everybody did a little bit throughout the year. And that was a lot easier to manage than trying to do it all at once. So if you can do like a rolling recruitment strategy, that worked better for my local association. And when we were targeting, you know, folks, sending out the emails to folks, letting them know about our local association and inviting them to become members, we not only included information about our upcoming programs, but we also, you know, outlined what the benefits of the organization were. And we did outreach to executive directors, not just to volunteer program leaders, because volunteer program leaders, you know, in nonprofits, there tends to be a lot of turnover. And if there's a program leader in place one year, they might not be there the next year. If they're a member this year, that membership may not extend to the next person to take over that position. So we wanted to educate executive directors about our existence. You know, like Gretchen was saying, like they don't necessarily know we exist in the world. So we wanted to let them know that this was a resource that they had for their staff, whoever that staff may be at a given time, that they knew that we were always a resource that they could send their volunteer program leaders to our local association for training and networking and all of that kind of thing. So yes, it's important to target volunteer leaders, but also executive directors, just so that they're aware of the organization as well. Tim also, we were having a chat the other day and he mentioned, you know, we were talking about all the different places that you can get a list put together of who do you outreach to. And then there's the obvious, you know, the list of nonprofits from your Secretary of State or your state commission. There's also the governments, the cities and the counties, the school systems, fire departments and emergency services. we at our local association, we've had cities and municipalities reach out to us for training for their staff who work in community engagement. So they might be a great source of membership that might not be as obvious because they're not in the nonprofit world, but they're definitely out there in numbers. So reaching out, expanding your idea of who would be a good member for your organization. When thinking about how to get a hold of people in nonprofits, Chris mentioned earlier about like nonprofit, what are the convenings around nonprofits? And definitely, like if you can attend those fairs, but what we did as a strategy, we would go to our big annual volunteer fair, which happens, and it's in the city of Portland, and it's for all the local nonprofits, and it's a pretty big deal because Portland has a lot of volunteerism. We did not have a table at that event because the people we wanted to target were at the tables at the event, right? So there's volunteers cruising around looking for volunteer opportunities, but who we wanted to reach were the people sitting at those tables giving out information about their program. And so what we did instead of having a table was we just made little flyer cards that we could go from table to table and say, hey, are you leading the program at your organization? Do you know about Nova? Do you know we have a networking opportunity coming up or a program coming up? And invite people at those volunteer fairs to join your local association. So, and other convenings, like Chris mentioned, that might be nonprofit specific, but not, or nonprofit, but not volunteer specific. Getting the word out about your association. You might consider presenting at conferences for the state commission, things like that, as a representative of your local association, again, to get the word out there that your local association exists. Tim mentioned this to us as well, and this was the case at my local association, the list of folks who were on our list for newsletters was much larger than our list of members, right? So making sure that you are inviting folks who are on your mailing list but aren't members yet to become members. They might be coming to your events, but are they actually members? Are they actually building up your numbers and contributing to your organization in that way? So I would invite you to look at the discrepancy between your newsletter list and your actual membership list and see where you can make the two match a little bit more. We at our local association have a person on our board whose entire job is board development. So all year long, their focus is on board development and outreach in that way, networking in that way, going to the events and identifying people who might make great board members and inviting them personally to come and join the board. As those of us, when we all do volunteer program management, we know the most effective way to get people to help is ask them personally to do it. So we have somebody at our local association whose entire focus is board development, not only supporting people who are on the board right now and being successful and remaining engaged, but also identifying people for the future and planning for that succession. When you're thinking about building up your program calendar, it's probably a good idea to have a mix of fundraising events and free events. Maybe the training costs a certain amount of money, but the networking event is free. And maybe there's an option to where not every single thing is an additional cost for your membership, or maybe there's at least a discount for members to attend. That said, it's totally appropriate and reasonable to have some of your programming cost an additional fee in addition to their membership fee. Not every program needs to be free to members. And like Gretchen said, a mix of in-person, virtual, hybrid, that especially in the metropolitan areas, the bigger cities, has been a lot more effective. I mean, I know personally, I don't really like to go to events anymore. It's just so convenient to just log in, take a training and log out, and I don't have to drive across town. I don't have to worry about parking. I don't have to add an additional 2 hours into my day to do that. for other people, they really, really want that in-person experience and that community building and that collaboration. And so I feel like it's reasonable to maybe consider a combination of both, or at least take into account, what is the environment you're working within, and making sure that you're working to that audience, right? If you're finding that your in-person workshops are not well attended as well attended as your online ones, well, maybe that's telling you something. So I would just keep that in mind as well. I think that, yeah, and I think Tim, you already mentioned the other thing on my list. So that is all I have. That was a lot of like bullet points from Tim and I. Anybody have any questions for us, or would anybody love to throw out something that has worked really well at your local association relating to marketing or outreach or programs or benefits, recruitment, anything around the topics that we've covered today that you want to give us a tip or a trick that has worked at your local association?
And Jen, while they're thinking about that, there was one other thing I wanted to add. And that is one of the things that we've done in GAVA, like many other organizations, is acknowledge that not everyone can afford a membership cost. It may, seem like, oh, it's not that much money, and it's, for your future. Have you talked to your boss? We've had those questions before, and we've had those discussions. But the reality is, for many different reasons that are frankly often none of our business, some people just can't afford it. And so thinking about ways to be, like Gretchen put in those, ways to be inclusive. I know a lot doing that. I know a lot of associations are. We've taken the tactic that any individual that is willing to participate in an activity with GAVA, we will give them a free annual membership. So if they join our board, if they volunteer with GAVA in one of our projects or initiatives, if they do a presentation for us, because we do one every month, and at no charge, then we give them a free membership for a year, and let them be able to participate in that. What's interesting is no one yet has taken us up on that offer, but many people have commented that they've appreciated that we offer it. So just the fact that we're trying to be proactive and trying to reach individuals who otherwise may not be easily connected with has definitely helped us.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tim. And we have the same thing at Nova. We call it a scholarship. But it's a free membership. We ask that they volunteer for a committee in return for that annual membership. People aren't, it doesn't always happen that way, but you don't know what people's circumstances will be in the next year or 2 or 3. They may not be able to afford it now, but they might in 2 years, and so yeah, just inviting more people in is a great point. And Brittany brought up a great point around especially discounts can be really nice for AmeriCorps members and for students, and they offer scholarships as well. All right.
And I'll
Anybody
just,
else have anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Gretchen.
I'll just add our, to on our website, our membership page, because as of this year, we've added a pay what you can option. So I'm just here on our membership page with Jen's video, which is lovely. Watch it at your leisure. Thank you so much, Jen, for doing that. But we found a great site call about embracing equity. And I just, if you want to lift this, that's totally fine. I did contact this person. She said it was fine to share, but I think it was really helpful for people to decide, kind of where you fall on that scale, this little graphic. And I just found it to be a really good resource. And so far, we have had people join on the pay what you can, and it's going very well. And I'm really glad that we've been able to do that this year. And I'm sure it will continue.
Awesome. Thanks, Gretchen. All right. Anybody else have questions or comments or something that's worked really well at your association you want to share?
Hey,
Ashley.
Jen, it's Ashley. Yeah, I have just a general question for the group. I've noticed that some of the organizations that are local but national. So for example, I know an organization in Virginia and one in California that they're offering all of their virtual things for free. So
Hmm.
I've been participating in them. And I don't really see anything in their membership that is beyond that. But I felt like I was participating so many times, I should be a member, even though I'm not in those places. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are in terms of offering, like, I know we need to keep value to membership to show how important that is, but at the same time, what are your thoughts in terms of offering free opportunities for the first year or something to show what that value is to become a member, or your thoughts on what these other organizations are doing?
Yeah. Tim, I feel like this is really relevant to you. Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that, we ask ourselves regularly with GAVA, and the answer is different every time we talk about it. I'll just be honest. Um, uh, Part of the reason that it's different is we actually assess every single event or activity that we do with GAVA, and from there decide, is this something that we want to open up because the message is important, or the cost is low or free, or it's a networking, or really deciding on that, or is this something that we want to make sure that we have value add as one of the benefits that we provide as to our members. And we end up with about 50-50. 50% of our events are open for free to anyone in the United States. Percent cost $5. Either it's you just have to determine what's best for your organization. I am a huge person that, and I mentioned it earlier, I really look at our mission statement a lot. And I volunteer with a number of organizations. I'm on a number of boards, and that's something I do regularly, is look at the mission statement and let that guide me. And think about our 3 to 5 year plan, what our board direction is moving in, and just trying to determine what is the right solution. But for us, we do assess each event, presentation, networking. Typically, all of our networking events are free. Most of our presentations are free. Our annual stuff is usually at a cost. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Brittany.
I can also contribute. So for us, it depended on what stage the agency or local association is going through. So the pandemic hit us really hard, and a lot of our board was burnt out because we weren't having that turnover and getting new blood. And last year we decided to host the Alive VMHC for the first time. And we made that free to members, and we offered a heavy discount if someone wanted to bring someone. So we took a look at it, and we let our membership know as often as we could that, hey, we're in a rebuilding year, and we know that this is going to offer a lot of really great information for you all. And as a perk of being a member, here you go. So if someone else wanted to join and they weren't a member, or someone was bringing someone, I think we just asked them to pay for the cost of their lunch, but they were still able to participate. So we didn't get a super large turnout, but everyone that did attend enjoyed it. And we also do surveys regularly. So I do a biannual survey of our membership, and I ask pretty tough questions like, what programs do you like? What programs don't you like? Because we can all sit around and think, oh, this is an awesome idea, but if no one is finding value in it, then maybe we retool just a little bit. But we just raised our dues this year. And we say at every turn, like, if you're having issues with paying your dues, or we noticed there was a lot of turnover from our members. So we have an individual membership that goes with the individual. So instead of signing up as an agency, I think 70% of our members changed jobs in the last 2 years. So instead of having it follow the agency, it now follows that person. So we can still find a way to, get to them, and it's at a slightly discounted rate.
Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, Brittany mentioned, and then Tim mentioned earlier, the rebuilding, and in some cases, it might make sense to focus on members, getting people in the door, and not so much on the fundraising. And Ashley, I don't know if this is the case, but I wonder if maybe the local associations you've been doing workshops with might be falling into that category as well. But it is interesting that you were like getting so much value from your attendance that you were inspired to become a member, right? And so I feel like that's probably the hope there, is that they can offer some of these things for free, hoping that it'll attract people just like you, who then see the value and want to support and can join in that way. I don't know, totally guessing, but I wonder if that's not a factor there. Anybody else have an idea to share?
What a great brain trust.
I know. All right. Well, thank you so much for this really great conversation. I really appreciate learning from you all, and I appreciate your time today, Brittany and Chris, especially for sharing with us. And Gretchen, I know you have you wanted to talk about one other thing, so I'll let you jump in there.
Thank you. I'm going back to the Alive website again. Imagine that. I just wanted to bring up that we are getting ready to open up the nominations for the Alive Impact Awards. And this is last year's page, and it's going to be updated probably by Friday because we have moved up the nomination process and timeline. So now it's going to be open July 1st to August 15th, and it used to be about a month after. But the whole nomination process will be open and close way before the next time we meet as a local association COP. So it'll be in the newsletter. We'll be putting it out on social media, but just encourage you to please share with your peers that just the top 3 things to remember. You do not have to be an Alive member to be nominated or nominate yourself. And the way the process works is that Tim is thinking, oh man, I think that Brittany would be great to nominate herself. And so we contact Brittany and say, hey, Tim thought you'd be good, nominate yourself, because only you can say all the awesomest things about you. And it's a good exercise to, do your own horn tooting, so to speak. And then the third thing is that we have just had so many fantastic stories coming out from the people who have won, past awards. And I will tell you that Jared, who won one of the emerging leader categories, he has since joined the membership committee, and he had been an Alive member before. There's no local association in Tennessee, so he was really hungry for that networking and people connection, and that's been great. And I met Carol Emmert from the Conner Prairie Museum in Indianapolis, or north of Indianapolis, and it was an amazing living history museum. And she does just a fantastic program. I just so enjoyed it. And Monica with Girl Scouts was also a recipient. Now she is managing all of the Alive Academies. So she's the one that's putting that together. And, we've had just a great lineup this year. So it's just been such a wonderful thing. And then Angela and Lisa have been very involved with their local association too, and have brought great things. So, and not, like I said, not everybody was a member. I think they've all become members now, but that is just coming up. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. And also through the sponsorship from Better Impact, it means a cash award. So real money that you can put towards getting your CVA. I think one person got like professional headshots, which are fine. You could buy books, you could take a class, anything for your professional development. So please consider that. And then the other thing I wanted to say quickly was so great to see some of you in person at the Points of Light conference, or some of you have just traveling. And if I haven't seen you yet, I will see you later this year. Brittany, I'll see you hopefully in September when we work eastward again. And Jen, I'll see you next month in Portland. But it's been great to meet up with many of you. And I want to go back to that one slide where it talks about the to move my stuff around here. The handbook. So we do have the local association handbook, and we're adding more resources to that as we go. So make sure that you do check that out. And see, I'm looking at the chat. Julianne says she took so many notes. That's great. And I will say that when we were at Points of Light, I actually talked to someone from the San Francisco Bay Area, and believe it or not, they have no local association. And they've tried to have an informal one for years, but people could just not get together. So I met with somebody who was like, it's got that passion, the spark of passion to get it going. So I'm really excited about being able to work with her. But Jen, I'll take it back to you so you can talk about the next session.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So yeah, our next little COP will be on September 27th. This year, we're doing kind of back to basics, sort of fundamentals for your local association, because a lot of us are in a rebuilding phase. And so the next series will be on leadership, sustainability, succession planning, that sort of topic. So we will look forward to seeing you in September. And until then, thank you again, Chris and Brittany and Tim and Gretchen, for sharing your knowledge and expertise. We're so grateful to get a chance to learn from you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you everybody else for listening in, or if you're watching the recording, hi, we're glad you could come in and learn from our friends as well. And I hope you stay cool wherever you are, especially you, Brittany. We're thinking of you. Stay inside. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thank you so much.